Our third morning song is in the turquoise hymnal. It's number 1002, Comfort Me. Number 10. Good morning. Please take a moment and greet your neighbors.
Here we are again.
Here we are again.
Let's go to the bridge.
Dun, dun, dun.
The chalice lit amongst us is a beacon of hope in a world of crisis, a beacon of possibility made manifest in community, a beacon of warmth through our interconnections, a beacon of light illuminating our shared wisdom, a beacon of connection by our being together.
We, your people, welcome you. We are Earthseed. You are Earthseed, one unique, one small seed, one great promise, tenacious of life, shaper of God, fire, water, sculptor, clay. You are Earthseed, and your destiny, the destiny of Earthseed, is to take root among the stars.
Everyone needs when Sara asked me to tell this story about this little boy in mountains of Tibet, I realized I've told it several times before here, and it's one of my granddaughter's favorite stories. Now, I want to tell you a little about my granddaughter. Her grandfather from Thailand lives with them, and of course, she has these old Yankee grandparents on her other side, and so she's been brought up as what her son would call a Buddhatarian or a Buddhaversalist, depending on what he's thinking that day. And one day, this happened last year, she's out in the playground. She lives in a neighborhood out in the edge of the plains, out in the middle of the country, and there's a lot of horses, and all the kids know how to ride horses, because that's a basic, most entertaining thing to do for kids there. And so they're playing in the playground, and one of the kids says, oh, well, let's play like, you know, like there's a giant, like in David and Goliath. And my granddaughter goes, I don't know that story. We told it last week here, just so our kids would know that story. But, and her friend says, well, it's in the Bible. And my granddaughter says, what's the Bible? And her friend says, aren't you Christian? Now, I know all Christians wouldn't have this response, but this little girl said, well, then you're going to hell. And my granddaughter said, no, I'm not. I am going to be reincarnated into something really cool, like a horse. So, I'm going to tell this story as I imagine Lena telling it. Once upon a time, in the edge of the vast prairies, where there was a neighborhood with lots of barns and lots of horses, and all the children loved to ride the horses, there was a little girl who grew up. Then she found work that she loved, probably taking care of horses, and she found people that she loved. She helped bring up another generation of animals and people. Then that generation helped take care of her as she got very, very old. And one day, ancient as she was, she died. And right after she died, she was disoriented. All of a sudden, everything was very, very dark and so bright. The lights were so bright you couldn't even see. It was very confusing. And then she heard a voice. She didn't know if it came from inside or outside. A still small voice that said, this is the universe, ever expanding, infinite. Hundreds of thousands of cosmoses. It's the heavens. And here, you can stay for all eternity. Or you can be reborn again into any living creature on any of these universes. How would she make such a choice? And then she heard, well, follow your heart. Follow your heart. Well, she already was forgetting what her life had been. She was forgetting she was a she, so I'm going to call it they now. They were wondering, what was life like? I kind of forgot, so I guess I want to do it again. Okay, said the voice, look out here. Look at all of these universes in the cosmos. There's hundreds and thousands of them. And she looked, and it looked like fireworks. They were all different colors and spun around in different ways. And they were gone. You could see them going so far away. And she said, how am I going to decide? Follow your heart. And she saw one. She said, look at that one over there. It's kind of a spiral, but then it kind of spills off like spilt milk. That looks like a good one. I'll go there. So they go to that galaxy. And she looks out and they say, well, look at this. There's hundreds of thousands of stars. Pick one. Oh, they say. Look at some are red and some are bright white. Some are faded and blue. So many different colors. Which one would they pick? Oh, look at that one. It's kind of a soft, warm yellow. I think I'll pick that one. Okay, well, there's lots of life in that solar system. She goes, and they go, and they look. And there are 8 or 9 planets there, depending on how you would categorize that. A little less confusing than hundreds of thousands. And they're looking, and they're going, well, that red one's kind of neat. It's small, and I like red. And I like that one with the rings around it. That's really neat. Oh, but look at that blue-green one. That's just really pretty. I think I'll go there. So there they go to that blue-green planet. And they hear this voice saying, look at all this life on this planet. Look at there's plankton iridescent in the ocean. There's huge whales. There's slow, quiet turtles, and there's big, noisy, squawking parrots flying by. There's beautiful deer and gazelles running. And there's lots of people all over the place. And as they look, they go, oh, look at that. Look at that beautiful animal just running with its mane flowing and its long tail. Looks so strong and free. I want to be that. That's a horse. Well, if you want to be a horse, there's horses all over this planet. Where do you want to go? On the land parts. Where do you want to go? And she sees some horses in a neighborhood with barns, and they get to walk around, and there's lots of children there. She says, that's where I want to be a horse. And next thing they know is that they're being born in a horse stall, with other horses neighing in the other stalls, and helpful adults, people around to welcome this horse into the world. And the horse nuzzles up looking for its mother's milk, and the children come and say, welcome, welcome. We have a new horse to love and to grow up with. And so ends my story. And we're going to sing our young adults there out to their youth group with a song that's on the inside back cover of your gray hymnal.
Good morning. My name is Valerie Martin. I'm a member of this congregation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. Before I continue, let me remind you to silence your cell phones. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation, we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We deepen our relationships as we create a compassionate, welcoming community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. We ask you to wear the paper name tags because it helps us to get to know you better. If you're seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. Whether you are new to Unitarian Universalism or visiting from another UU congregation, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after the service to have any questions answered. People become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting the church with their time and finances. If you are considering joining the church, please talk to our assistant minister, Holly Miller. Following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy coffee and fellowship in the social area, where you will find information about current opportunities for engagement and reflection. There are a number of announcements in the weekly bulletin that I hope you'll take home and read, and I have one more. We need ushers for our holiday services on Christmas Eve. We have 3 services that day, 10 a.m., 5:30 p.m., and 9 p.m. No experience necessary. If you can help, also see Holly. Thank you.
Let us finish arriving. Feeling our feet on the ground, gravity keeping us in the room. Connecting to our breath. And remembering the week since we gathered last. As you go through your memory of the week, you may remember some moments of joy, sorrow, happiness, or grief. We invite you now to come share those moments by lighting a candle in silence, or if you'd like to have them read out loud, write them down on a piece of yellow paper right in front of you in your pew. Thanks. Join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, accompany us through these life markers, through these changes, through these uncertainties. Give us comfort and allow us to comfort others. Remind us that we are never, ever alone. May it be so. It's now time for our offering. We have Earl Lattimore here to talk to us about Share the Plate for this month with the Community Advisory Board. Welcome, Earl.
Good morning. My name is Earl Lattimore, and I am a Community Achieve Site Manager with Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools. Thank you for having me today. Also joining me is my colleague, Ms. Dana Eskridge from the Department of Children's Services, Resource Linkage Coordinator. Wanted to talk with you a little bit about our Davidson County Community Advisory Board. And our CAB is about 10 years old. It was birthed out of the Resource Linkage Department of the Department of Children's Services. And what it is basically a conglomerate of different organizations, both public and private, schools, churches, businesses, that support the efforts to keep children and families together and out of state custody. We are not funded by any particular source. We thrive mainly on donations, be it monetary and physical, by way of clothing and different products. The Davidson County Community Advisory Board works in various ways. One situation that I can tell you about is we had a mother who was 33 years old, who was a mother of 10, and actually was facing eviction from her apartment due to some gaps within her payments. And so we were able, after allowing her case manager to come and present the case before us, to make a decision to aid in financial assistance and wraparound support. One of the great things about the CAB is that the CAB allows us as service providers to come together and network. So a lot of times, before things even get to us, we're able to solve just amongst one another as service providers. So we thank you for the opportunity to come before you this morning, and we ask that you give us some consideration. Also, your tree outside, we are recipients of that as well. So everything you do to help and support us, we thank you for that. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. On an evening in April this past year, just around sunset, I stepped out of my car after a 7-hour drive to the coast. I was immediately greeted by the sound of waves hidden behind the towering building of condos where we were staying. Ashley, my wife, and I lugged our bags up to our spot for the weekend, and once we had the door unlocked, I made a beeline through the small apartment to the balcony and shoved open the heavy glass door to be greeted by exactly what I imagined would greet me, by exactly what I had driven these hours to see after making the decision to go on this trip only a few days before. There in front of me was the sun setting over the Gulf of Mexico. It was a breathtaking view of the emerald green water and beautiful orange-streaked clouds. The sound of the surf was loud enough that words spoken softly to yourself were muted to anyone more than a foot or two away from you. And the words that escaped my lips as I took in that view were, "Thank goodness." It was the week after my birthday, and also the week after I had unexpectedly lost a job that had been incredibly meaningful to me. It was just about 6 months after the dialogue in our country had turned confused and desperate, after an election that for many of us felt like an earthquake. It was a year since Ashley and I had taken a huge leap of faith in purchasing our first co-owned home and started in on an exhausting renovation that had taken more energy and, to be honest, money than we had ever anticipated. I was so tired. Outside of my family, my job had felt like the thing I could trust for the past year. It was the place that felt like home. It was the place that kept the outside world and its often disturbing and fear-inducing news at bay while I plugged along doing work that I was used to next to people that I trusted. When that was taken away from me, I felt paralyzed and struggled against hopelessness. I didn't know what to trust, and I didn't know quite what to hope for. I was very much in the dark. This is why it felt like an absolute miracle when Ashley reminded me that her mother was headed to the Gulf the next week and that she could get off work for a couple of days if we wanted to go. I'm not sure if it was my exact reaction, but in my memory I cried tears of relief because nothing sounded more perfect. What I was running towards, and what I used my 3 days at the beach to remind me of, was that my current state of uncertainty and hopelessness, one that had its origins in our country's division and had become more acute with the recent change in my own life, wasn't everything that was going on. There was always more. I waded out alone into the waves that were particularly cold in April and stared out into their vastness. I was reminded that the unknown isn't always scary. I got another reminder of that in the evenings on that trip. On cloudy nights on the beach, it's pitch black. The night can be so inky that you can't see your hand in front of your face until you blink a few times. But you can still hear those waves. You're still surrounded by a beautiful sonic reminder of the unknown. On that trip, I was reminded that the unknown was a place to imagine into existence, and my imagination didn't have to go for the worst-case scenario. I could always imagine hope. In her book, Hope in the Dark, Rebecca Solnit discusses with immense thoughtfulness how to be a person of action in a world where progress can seem impossible. She writes, "Cause and effect assumes history marches forward, but history is not an army. It is a crab scuttling sideways, a drip of soft water wearing away stone, an earthquake breaking centuries of tension." That image of a crab scuttling sideways is one I love, and also one that I witnessed that weekend last April. These tiny little creatures move with steps that seem as choreographed as they do chaotic. They move deftly in these odd little motions, clearly working towards a certain goal that I can't perceive. From my zoomed out vantage point, it surely takes a lot longer for me to register progress in their work than what they can see from their on the ground, in the thick of it view of the situation. And I honestly never pay attention to their movements long enough to see the end result of their work. And the truth is, I don't matter to their work. I'm just lucky enough to witness it and even delight in it, as I'm simultaneously comforted by the sound of the waves and in that altered state of peace that can come from time taken away from our everyday lives. In the months since April, the news cycle hasn't gotten any easier for me to digest. I'm often frightened by stories of laws being passed that put up barriers to the agency of our most vulnerable neighbors. I'm frightened by the news that powerful people choose to support members of their tribe who are known predators. I'm frightened by a world that gets more and more expensive to operate in and that seems more and more indifferent to that struggle. But something else has happened to me since April, too. We are expecting our first child. Funnily enough, due the week before the 1-year anniversary of the day I lost that job. And as I witness my wife's pregnancy and see evidence of our baby's development, I stand back and marvel every day it's taking place. Ashley invites me to place my hand on her stomach and feel this now 1-pound little creature flip and kick and bounce around. And I am lost back in imagination, thinking about what their little world must be like. Just like I was on that beachfront at night, they are ensconced in darkness. I imagine them living in the darkness, not knowing anything but the dark, making their way around their space, constantly exploring every millimeter of their world. They've never seen light, but they grow and they move, and with all that flipping around, it's hard not to imagine that they're playing.
Please open your turquoise hymnal to number 1047, Nada te turbe. We'll sing this twice through. Please rise.
Our meditation this morning centers on a Sikh prayer for America on November 9th, 2016. It was written by Valerie Kaur, a Sikh activist, lawyer, and filmmaker, written the day after the election last year. Let us enter into the spirit of silence together, reflecting on these words. In our tears and agony, we hold our children close and confront the truth. The future is dark. But my faith dares me to ask, what if this darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our America is not dead, but a country still waiting to be born? What if the story of America is one long labor? What if all the mothers who came before us, who survived genocide and occupation, slavery and Jim Crow, racism and xenophobia and Islamophobia, political oppression and sexual assault, are standing behind us now, whispering in our ear, "You are brave"? What if this is our great contraction before we birth a new future? Remember the wisdom of the midwife. Breathe, she says, then push. Now it is time to breathe, but soon it will be time to push. Soon it will be time to fight for those we love, Muslim father, Sikh son, trans daughter, indigenous brother, immigrant sister, white worker, the poor and forgotten. Let us make an oath to fight for the soul of America, as Langston Hughes said, the land that never has been yet and yet must be, with revolutionary love and relentless optimism. And so I pray this Sikh prayer. In the name of the divine within us and around us, we find everlasting optimism. In the name of the divine within us and around us, we find everlasting optimism. Within your will, may there be grace for all of humanity.
Octavia Butler, a Black writer most known for her books Parable of the Sower and Kindred, uses her imagination to find hope in the midst of despair. In Parable of the Sower, she imagines the year 2024. She envisions the erosion of the natural earth, alongside takeovers of corporations and communities of poor people without any support. In this world, the main character, Lauren Olamina, is living amidst chaos and destruction, fire and famine and violence. After trying to make it work in her gated community, she ventures away. Throughout her travel, she begins to meet people and to build community. As a part of her survival strategy, she develops and records her personal theology, which she believes helps to guide humans to their destiny, from this world to the next. Lauren Olamina produces a book of the living that outlines her religion, which she calls Earthseed. The 3 tenets of Earthseed are these. The first, God is change. The second, shape God. And the third, the destiny of Earthseed is to take root among the stars. The Book of the Living is divided into verses that are like short poems and proverbs. Today I want to talk about verse 59, which reads this. The destiny of Earthseed is to take root among the stars. It is to live and to thrive on new earths. It is to become new beings and to consider new questions. It is to leap into the heavens again and again. It is to explore the vastness of heaven. It is to explore the vastness of ourselves. The third tenet of Earthseed gives us a compass towards our purpose and our destiny. And it gives this little girl sustenance to carry on, to build community and to love. Our purpose is to ask questions, to imagine new worlds, and to explore the vastness of ourselves. Easy, easy peasy, right? But what does it really mean to take root among the stars? Seems a little counterintuitive. Putting down roots typically involves some sort of solid foundation or soil at the least, none of which exist among the stars that I know of. It's all just space. So we don't have a lot of concrete images about what this really looks like. We don't have a lot of imagery for what it looks like to ground ourselves in the vastness, to find comfort in the expansion. Just think of how many times you've been asked to give a task with not enough instructions. They just say, go make a thing. And you're like, okay, but what, on what canvas, for who, what? It's hard to feel confident in those choices, and it's hard to make sure that you're getting it right. It's hard to make sure that you're giving the people what they want, what they were asking for. So it's Advent now, the time when we get to prepare ourselves for Christmas in all sorts of ways. And we get to see how Mary lives this out. We meet Mary as an unwed but pregnant and engaged young girl. After the Holy Spirit paid her a visit, she could have really responded a lot of ways. She could have been very angry. She could have been very hopeless. And in fact, she does. She says something like, how could this be? Now, I think that was putting it nicely. I have a sister, and I imagine if this was her, she would have been like, What? Me? You must be talking to that one. She would have a lot of sass to accompany, but we just get, how could this be? So after the Holy Spirit tries to explain how this all would happen, which I find to be weird and for another day to really go into, she says yes. Well, actually she says this, I am a slave of the Lord, let it be done as it is written. So usually when slaves and their masters are duking out for power, or the slave wants to disobey the master, it doesn't end well. Doesn't mean it doesn't end like how it's supposed to, but it just doesn't end well. So she's like, all right, cool. But she still has choices. She really could have aborted the baby. She could have gave the baby away. We've got a story of Moses. There are things. She has agency still in this moment. And all of them are very valid acts of resistance, sometimes necessary, but she decides to keep the baby. Now here's where the caveat comes in. Men wrote and assembled the Bible. So we have to really consider what truths were recorded and which truths weren't recorded. This is going to require a little bit of work and imagination and effort on our part. So we can't assume that she only has one reaction or response. This is a really big life event. I can imagine she was pissed and angry and really torn up about this. She was probably full of rage and disbelief and shock. I mean, she had a plan, right? I'm a planner, so I know you have a plan, this is how it goes, and you're really angry at the people who want to disrupt that and don't leave you really no choice. She probably sounded a lot like Job, who has a whole book of the Bible devoted to how angry he is at God. But one of the things he says is, "Why did I not die at birth?" She could have responded like that. And she probably did. She probably carried that for a while, if not ever. What she chooses to do, and what we hear about from the writer, is that she becomes a shaper of God. In the Magnificat, which is in Luke, after she has some time to sit with this and go to her cousin Elizabeth and talk about it and exchange stories, she gets to choose what God she's invoking and claiming. Here's a snippet of what she says. "For you, the Almighty, have done great things for me, and holy is your name. You have scattered the proud in their conceit, and you have deposed the mighty from their thrones, and raised the lowly to high places. You have filled the hungry with good things, while you have sent the rich away empty." She gets to choose what God she needs in the moment. She's not letting God just be the guy who imposed this trauma on her. She is manifesting her agency to invoke the God that she needs to make this all make sense. So when we use our imagination and some of our real life experiences to kind of flesh out her story, Mary becomes a teacher of how to invite grief and imagination to walk alongside of us. One of my favorite phrases that Jade often says to me is, "What else is possible?" Mary lives this question. And for what I know to be true, Mary teaches us how to take root among the stars. But we even have more than one teacher besides Mary. We have a bunch. Even amidst the twisting of Mary's stories to make women fit into these small and tiny oppressive boxes, people have claimed her image as an image of resistance. In Poland, a dark-skinned black Madonna rests. Andrew Harvey, who's a scholar of the mystic tradition, describes her like this: "The blackness of divine mystery, celebrated by the mystics who see the divine as forever unknowable, mysterious, beyond all our concept, hidden from all our senses in a light so dazzling, it registers on them as darkness." Others describe her as the mother of sorrow and solitude. Some describe her charge as a call to balance and wholeness. And these artists and storytellers are playing in the dark, reimagining new worlds and therefore becoming new beings. Meinrad Craighead, who draws the connection between the Hopi spirit of the Crow Mother and the Black Madonna, says this: "Black is holy. It's the mysteries of the night sky. We both come from and are contained somehow by this darkness. We both come from and are rooted by this darkness. We both come from and are held by this mystery." We don't have to come to the same conclusions about Mary, about how we hold grief and imagination, but we can think about Mary and her storytellers as teachers that show us how to consider new questions and to explore the vastness and the infinite possibilities, as teachers of what it looks like to have relentless optimism. I can imagine a Hail Mary that goes something like this: "Hail Mary, full of grace and rage and doubt and flexibility, fear, and gratitude. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Of thy womb, grief. Of thy womb, grace. Of thy womb, imagination. Of thy womb, sorrow. Of thy womb, heartache. Of thy womb, love. Holy Mary, Mother of God, Shaper of God, Architect of God, Inventor of God, and Framer of God, Composer of God. Pray for us sinners. When we think in absolutes and dichotomies, when we suppress our complexities and shrink ourselves, when we give away our agency and power, when we choose scarcity over abundance, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Our closing hymn is number 55 in the gray hymnal, Dark of Winter, number 55. Please rise in body or spirit as you're so moved and join in singing.
For the chalice extinguishing, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Let us go from this place, living and thriving on new earths, becoming new beings, leaping into the heavens, and exploring the vastness of ourselves. This service is over. May our service begin again renewed.